Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Bacon. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 2 of Undercover Gangsta. And listen to me. No matter how you slice it, J-Mac was working for the police. Except that he was working on a bigger stage than most people in prison when they start to collude with the police. Now, it happens all the time. Trust me on this now. People that's in gangs and been head of the gang, because I've been approached on several different occasions like that back in the day when I was in rotation. You would have the people at the prison, the warden, the lieutenant, the captain, and all this. And when something goes on, they come and get the heads of the organizations. Well, depending on the situation, they might just get you, they might get everybody. And they would talk to you in a way to where they tried to make it seem like that you had a vested interest in keeping the peace. So they would rely on you to make sure you keep your people in order so that you could continue to do what you do. Because if you didn't do that, if you didn't keep the peace, then they were going to have to keep the peace. And if they kept the peace, then that means that it would interfere with the way that you might be doing business on the compound. So yeah, it happens. But see, this was a different situation. See, because he was full-fledged undercover agent working on the behalf of the police. It ain't no way around it. But he didn't care though. He had been given an opportunity to become a free man. Not just to be able to benefit in selling drugs or getting a piece of chicken or something to eat or being able to maybe smell the perfume of a woman that worked at the prison. No, this wasn't that. He had a chance to go home. So yeah, in his mind, if he had to get his hands dirty and sell the gang out that he was once upon a time the head of, but now back again, then so be it. Who cares, he thought. At least he was benefiting from it. Most people in his position didn't get that type of opportunity. Not to the level that he did. He had done his part. And now it was time for the warden to make good on his end. So he picked up the phone and he called the warden's number. And after it rang a couple of times, the voice on the other end said, "Hello." It was the warden. J-Mac said, "Hey, it's me." The warden responded to him and said, "What can I do for you?" J-Mac proceeded to fall in and start to tell him all the things that had been done on his behalf, trying to make sure that the things that the governor, the things that the commissioner wanted done had been done. And now he felt as though he had upheld his end. So he asked the warden, he said, "How is this going to go? Because I know you can't just release me and let me go home. Am I going to have to file something in court? Is something like that going to happen? Am I going to have to file a claim?" So he wanted to know what mechanism was going to be used to move him from prison to the streets. Because you can't just open the front door and say, "Go home." So the warden kind of snickered and laughed at him. He said, "Look, we'll look into that another time. Right now, you don't need to be concerned about that. Just make sure that you keep your guys in order. Make sure you keep everybody in line." And J-Mac, he felt something. He felt something when the warden said that to him. He felt as though he was being played. Now let me tell you something. When you've been in a game, you know when somebody's playing you. You know when you're being taken advantage of. And you don't tolerate that. Depending on who you are and what you got going on, you're not going to tolerate that. And J-Mac, being head of the Two-Face Mafia, he wasn't going to tolerate it, not even from the warden. So he snapped back and he said, "Look here, man. I don't have time to be playing with you." And the warden pushed back real fast immediately because the warden understood the type of person that J-Mac was. He understood that because he had been doing this for a while. So he pushed back real fast. He was not going to give any ground whatsoever. And he said, "Look, do what you got to do and I'll do what I got to do. But don't be calling me trying to insist on nothing, inmate." And when he hit him with the inmate, the hair on the back of J-Mac's neck stood up. And he started to get angry because now he knew without a shadow of a doubt that this thing wasn't going to play out the way he had been told it was going to play out. But he was caught up in the middle because he looked at the situation with a realistic eye and he knew, hey, I can't go back and tell my guys what I've done. I got to be careful about how I play this thing. Now, he had an ace in the hole. And that ace in the hole was all the recorded messages between him and the warden, and sometimes him, the warden, and the commissioner. He had recorded phone calls that could prove what he was saying. But who would care about something like that? Yes, he could blow the lid off of it and prove that a scandal had taken place. But he had no deal in writing. He had no contracts. He had nothing that would guarantee the outcome that they had told him that he would have. Nothing. He trusted them to do right by him. See, desperation will make you do that. You can be so desperate for something to happen. And believe me, I know, when you're in prison and you have the kind of time that I have, I can totally relate to what J-Mac was going through. You'll do almost anything to be able to get another chance at freedom. Cut your right leg off, cut your right arm off, whatever you needed to do. If the opportunity presented itself, you're most likely open to it. And he was. But at the same time, there's no way that you can guarantee an outcome like that. That's why you have a lot of people in the penitentiary, when they get an opportunity to garner some kind of favor from the administration, they do it, whether it be by snitching, extra work, whatever the case may be. You become a part of the environment that you're living in, that you're trying to survive, just so you can be validated by the people that's in charge of that environment. And this was no different. Like I said, even though J-Mac was playing on a bigger scale, a higher stage than other people that were in his position, he was also being played like them. You see, a lot of times when you have those jailhouse informants or snitches, whatever you want to call it, they'll do all of these different things for the administration, and then when they were done with them, they ship them off or they kick them to the curb. And in some cases, they would even expose them to the compound. Real subtle like. Somehow or another, the information about them being an informant made its way, it was kept private for years, and then all of a sudden one day, it just leaks out. See, J-Mac understood that, and he was worried. He was concerned that this could be something that could happen to him. So he played it real smooth. He played it real smooth. He knew that if he didn't play this right, this could be the end of him in more ways than one. Now it wasn't just about his freedom. This was about his life. And he had to make sure that this came off right. Yeah. The prospect of him going home was looking dimmer and dimmer. But now, the anger that he was feeling, he wanted to get his lick back, plus he wanted to continue to live a better way in there. And hopefully, maybe, the day would come where they would honor the promises that they had made to him. Yeah, more than likely he was fooling himself, but we'll see. We'll see. So J-Mac, he told the warden, he said, listen to me. I got tapes. I got recordings of every conversation that we've ever had. And the warden was no fool. He was no fool at all. He said, yeah, I can imagine that would be something that you would do. But he said, so what does that prove? That I lied to you? That I told you that I would do certain things for you if you got your guys in order? He said, who are you going to give that to? Who are you going to expose me to? Because as soon as you expose that, you're exposed. He said, you tried to play in the big leagues, but you wasn't ready. He said, stick to the gang life that you live. Play that. You're good at that. But this level that I'm on, you're not ready for that. So J-Mac, he sat there and he listened to the warden go on and on and on, belittling him, making him feel like he was not worthy, making him feel like that he wasn't on the same level, making him feel like that he did not deserve to be respected. And he became angrier and angrier. But he knew that the warden was right. He knew that there was nothing that he could really do to make the warden do what he had been promised. Nothing. without exposing himself. So he had to find some kind of way to flip everything to his advantage. So what he did, he preempted a lot of the things that he felt that the warden and the commissioner and all of them would do. And he made sure that his sister made copies of the recordings. And he was going to leak them to the newspaper anonymously, hoping that by leaking them to the newspaper, one or two at a time, edited of course, that he would be able to put pressure on them to do right by him some kind of way. Again, fooling himself. So he edited out the things that could identify him, that could hurt him, and he leaked it to the press to show the fraud, to show the manipulation, to show the abuse of authority that had been going on in the Department of Corrections. And when he did that, the phones were ringing off the hook. The warden was receiving phone calls, the commissioner was receiving phone calls, the governor even received a phone call. A new governor doesn't want that type of heat. They don't want that. All of that attention, that's unwanted attention. So he called the commissioner and he told the commissioner to tell the warden to fix the problem or he would fix it. And he didn't want any more of these recordings to leak out, making it look like that his administration was fraudulent and abusing authority and making deals with gang members, causing the murders of different individuals in the streets. He didn't want that. He didn't want that. He didn't care that it had happened. He just didn't want to be connected to it. So this was what they did next. The warden, of course, had friends in law enforcement. So he had a tap put on J-Mac's phone. But J-Mac had anticipated that they would eventually do that if they hadn't already been doing it. So he developed this sophisticated coding system, the way that he would talk to his sister on the phone. Nobody else knew what they were saying. But eventually, the warden and the people that were tapping the phone, they got frustrated with all the things that were going on. So they had some people pay J-Mac's sister a visit in the middle of the night. J-Mac couldn't help her. He couldn't help her at all. And at the same time, while they were bumping down on her, the warden pushed back a little bit himself. And he started to leak some information through the female that was cool with Tasmanian Devil that J-Mac was an informant for the warden. And that information started to spread around the prison that J-Mac was in. And his lieutenants came to him and they said, bro, what's going on? We're hearing some things. We're hearing some things about you and the warden. And then people started to wonder all of the things that had happened to Tasmanian Devil and the other individuals that were part of the Two-Face Mafia. Nobody ever went down for that. See, that's uncommon in prison. When you have gang wars, whether they were gang wars that were by the same individuals or by different organizations, people got locked down. People got put in the back. People got put on max. People got charged by the police. People went to court. But nothing, not one person was charged. And it wasn't like it was a secret as to what was going on. Because it was made known to the prisoners, this is Two-Face Mafia's business. And not one of them, not one of the lieutenants that put in work for J-Mac was even put in the whole pending investigation. So now, even those lieutenants started to question, is this true? Could this be true? Is he working for them? Is he using us, working for them? So they all got on the phone and they had a conference call with J-Mac and they questioned him. And he stood his ground. And he pushed back. He pushed back hard. And he told them, I only came back to get things in order. My understanding that not too many people liked what was going on anyway, but that wasn't true. He was manipulating their minds because they had endeared themselves to him. They had convinced themselves that what he was doing was right. And they didn't want to say now you were wrong, because if they said that, then they would have to conclude that they've been working with an informant. Now they were tied to him, hip to hip, arm to arm, shoulder to shoulder, back to back. Whatever happened to him was going to happen to them. And they couldn't have the whole two-faced mafia organization turning on them. They couldn't handle that. So they told him that they understood, even though they still had questions about what he was saying. Now none of it was making sense. J-Mac started to realize what he was up against. The warden was playing dirty. So he called his sister to tell her to release a couple of more of the edited recordings of the phone calls. But this time when he called, his sister answered the phone crying, upset, afraid, telling him that she had just been paid a visit by somebody representing the warden. They didn't hide the fact of who they were. They didn't do any of that. They told her who they were and why they were there. And that she had only one choice. And that was to turn over all the recordings. So J-Mac said, "What did you do, sis? Did you turn them over? Are you all right?" She said, "I did. And no, I'm not all right." He said, "What happened?" And she told him. At first she resisted, so they roughed her up a little bit, and she came up off of it. See, she wasn't cut for this type of lifestyle. She was a nurse. She was not in the streets. She didn't understand the magnitude of what it was that J-Mac had gotten her into. This was serious stuff. But she loved her brother. She would do anything for her brother, but she didn't understand that she could get hurt like this. She didn't know that this was a possibility. J-Mac had assured her that everything was going to be okay and this was going to help him get out of prison. So she went along with it. And a lot of family members do the same thing. They love us. They help us. But they don't factor in all the things that could go wrong and all the things that could happen to him. He manipulated his own sister in his bid to get out of the penitentiary. And now she has suffered for it. Now J-Mac was pissed. He was seeing red. So when he got off the phone, he told his sister he was going to take care of it. And she begged him, "Please don't leave it alone. Be done with it." But he couldn't. He couldn't let it go. He was so deep into it now because his life was in danger. His sister's life was in danger. He didn't know what to do other than to strike back. It's the nature of being in a gang. When nothing is working, you come out with violence. That's how you solve your problems. Gang members don't talk it out. They don't talk it out. They fight it out. And who's ever left standing, that's who's right. It's not about integrity, morals, honesty. It's about who has the strongest game. Who's going to be left standing. That's what makes you right in the streets. How strong you are. That's the only thing that matters. So J-Mac, he was trying to figure out what his next move was going to be. How was he going to reach the warden? How was he going to do something that would be able to let the warden know that, look, you crossed the line. We had a deal. You're not standing on what you said you were going to do. How does he do that? He didn't have a clue as to what he could really do. So usually when he's in a bind like this, he has his lieutenants to confide in. But not now. He couldn't confide in them. Then they would know that he manipulated and he used them. But there was one. There was one that he trusted beyond everybody. That he thought he could tell the truth to. He wasn't sure, but he shared some things with this one lieutenant that was questionable in the past. And he never betrayed him. So he called him to the cell and told him he needed to talk to him. And if you want to hear what that conversation went like and what they concluded after that conversation, check out the next episode. It's getting good. This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.
I'm getting so tired.